So today we're going to be booking the UFC's International Fight Week card, UFC 317. We have got the confirmed fights so far on screen, and then I've made the perfect 5-fight main card that we're going to go through after. But let's go through the matchups that have already been announced. So we have got Deniz versus Justin Tafa. We have got Michael Johnson versus Daniel Selhuber. We have got Brandon Royval versus Manel Kape, and Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov. Now the structure of the card is yet to be announced, but in my opinion these would all be prelim bouts. Let's add one more into the mix, and that would be Mauricio Huffy versus Beneil Dariush. Now that fight is in talks to take place at UFC 317, and I think that would be a perfect addition to the prelim. So let's order this right away. So I would start the card with Michael Johnson versus Daniel Selhuber. I would then move on to the heavyweights in Deniz versus Tafa. I would then have, and this might be a bit controversial, Mauricio Huffy versus Beneil Dariush. Then I would have Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov, and I would end the prelims. The prelim headliner would be Brandon Royval versus Manel Kape. Both guys are very, very highly ranked in the UFC's flyweight division, and the winner of this is arguably going to go on and fight for the title next. So that is how I would structure the prelims. I'm liking these matchups that they've announced so far, as long as these are all prelim bouts. So let's move on right away to the main card opener. Let me move this on screen. Main card opener. What are we doing here? Main card opener. We have got Robert Whittaker versus Caio Borralho. I think this is the perfect main card opener. I think it is perfect to have high-ranked middleweights on this card. You will see why when we get to the main event, but this is a matchup that I think makes complete sense. Robert Whittaker, people are saying he's washed, people are saying he's done. You've got Caio Borralho, in my opinion, a tad bit overrated. We're yet to see how good this guy really is. His best win is a Jared Cannonier that's, 106 years of age. Jared Cannonier is still underrated in my opinion, and showed crazy durability in his matchup against Caio Borralho, like how he wasn't put out cold was insane. But Caio Borralho, I know people are but people are constantly pairing him to Imavov. Imavov's clear of Borralho in my opinion. I don't want to see Imavov sit out personally, but I feel like if he does, you can't really be that annoyed by it, because just look at the line of work this guy's done recently. Where Caio Borralho, he does have a big win over Jared Cannonier, but his other big win outside of that is Paul Craig.
Bruh.
Which, you know what I mean? Paul Craig has probably the best. Paul Craig's probably the best, worst UFC fighter of all time. But nonetheless, this would be a great stylistic matchup in my opinion. And over 3 rounds, I think that would favour Caio Borralho. And this would be a good kind of passing of the torch type thing. If Caio Borralho does beat Whittaker, then he's arguably there for a title shot, if not one win off. And if Robert Whittaker is able to beat Caio Borralho, then he's right back in the title contention. So there's a lot at stake for this opening matchup. I think stylistically it's a really fun one. Someone could get stopped. If someone does get stopped, I'm probably going to say it's Robert Whittaker. Caio Borralho does have a good bit of punching power, but I would see this fight going all 3 rounds. With it being 3 rounds, I'd probably lean... No, I actually wouldn't. You know, I think Robert Whittaker would win this matchup. I think Whittaker's got a lot left in the gas tank. I think Robert Whittaker is still an elite level middleweight. This guy's extremely well rounded. He's got really good takedown defense and scrambles. I know we didn't really get a chance to see that against Khamzat Chimaev, but again, that's Khamzat Chimaev. Caio Borralho doesn't have that type of grappling as a Khamzat Chimaev does. And on the feet, I think Caio Borralho is good everywhere, but I think Robert Whittaker's striking would cause him a lot of problems. I remember seeing stuff, what Caio Borralho was doing in the Jared Cannonier fight on the feet, and I just thought a higher level striker than Jared Cannonier, like an Adesanya or someone like Whittaker who is an elite striker, would pick up on it. Yeah, I'm going with Robert Whittaker to win this opening matchup. But nonetheless, I think this would be the perfect main card opener. Let's move on up the card. Look, we have got Volkov versus Almeida. I know this matchup was being targeted. Then Volkov said he's not fighting Almeida, he's waiting for something better. Then we heard it's being announced for UFC Atlanta. Maybe that's where they're thinking of having this fight. Why the fuck would this fight main event UFC Fight Night Atlanta? Doesn't make any sense at all. None of the guys are from there. They're not even American. It's not even as if Volkov or Almeida are really big international stars either. They're not. They are highly ranked UFC heavyweights that are one win each off fighting for the title. I know Volkov is coming off that loss to Cyril Gane. I do think that was a robbery. I do think Volkov clearly won that matchup. But Almeida, I don't want to say he's the boogeyman of the division because I don't think anybody's actually ducking him, to be honest. But I think this would be a good matchup to see who is next in line to fight Tom Aspinall after he beats John Jones. And in terms of who I think would win this matchup, I think Volkov has really made a lot of improvements in his grappling. And on the feet, it's not even close. Volkov is much better on the feet than what Almeida is. But on the ground, Almeida is dangerous. This guy is a dangerous grappler. Look at what he done to Curtis Blades. I know Curtis Blades beat him in the end, but he was ragdolling Curtis Blades very early on in that matchup. And Volkov doesn't have the wrestling credentials of a Curtis Blades, although actual wrestling and MMA wrestling tend to vary at times, to be honest. But what I see in this matchup is I see Volkov being able to stuff the takedowns of Almeida, or maybe be taken down and work his way back up. But what I think will happen in this matchup, and we've seen it again in the Curtis Blades matchup, when you show adversity to Almeida, when you're able to not just roll over and be beaten up by the guy, cracks start to really show in this guy's game. And Volkov, with the height of him, the power of him, his just well-roundedness on the feet as well, like this guy's a sniper in there. I think eventually he would break Almeida, and I could see him TKOing Jilton Almeida early second round. I think he'd come through a bit of adversity in the first round. Maybe Almeida might get to his back or something like that, but I think in the second round Volkov would be able to stuff the takedowns of Almeida. I think he would start to piece him up on the feet. Almeida would then be backed up against the cage. I used to see like a big knee to the body or into the solar plex, or just Volkov just teeing off on Almeida against the cage, and Almeida just like crumpling down against the cage. Don't know why I'm reenacting the fucking movement, but that's what I think would happen in this matchup. And I think this would be a good way to introduce who is going to be next for the winner of Tom Aspinall versus John Jones, which we all know is going to be Tom Aspinall. It's always good to have heavyweights on the card, especially when I'm fairly confident there will be a finish in this matchup. So that's always good to have on a pay-per-view card, in my opinion. And it makes more sense to have it here. It's International Fight Week. One guy's from Russia, one guy's from Brazil. Why the fuck would these guys be headlining the fight night in Atlanta? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Let's move on to our feature fight. This fight right here needs to happen. Now, I was always... After Sean Brady beat Leon Edwards, I was of the mindset Sean Brady should just sit out and fight the winner of Bilal versus JDM. However, if JDM beats Bilal Muhammad, Islam is going to fight him next. It's pretty much been confirmed by the UFC. Well, not by the UFC, but Islam actually have said that's what he's doing, and the UFC haven't came out and been like, no, you're not actually, you're fighting at lightweight. So I think there's a good chance that that is what's going to happen if JDM is able to beat Bilal Muhammad. Whereas if Bilal Muhammad does beat JDM, then we're going to have a bit of a gap anyway, because neither JDM or Bilal are extremely active fighters. Now, obviously, JDM was coming off that big arm break, and Bilal Muhammad, in fairness, was meant to fight in December but was injured. But normally, those guys aren't active, so we need to keep the matchups moving in this division. Therefore, Sean Brady will be taking on Shavkat Rakhmonov in my universe. If the UFC want to take pointers here, that's fine. I'm not going to charge you a hefty fee, maybe like $1 million just for these matchmaking skills. But I would do Sean Brady, Shavkat Rakhmonov. That could be the main event to Fight Night Azerbaijan, or whatever the fuck that card is, and have this matchup. This is a fight that people have wanted to see for quite a while now. Kamaru Usman, stop sitting on your position. If you're done fighting, that's fine. You had a good career, retire. Let people, the younger prospects, hungrier guys who want to prove themselves and get to the point that you were at in your career, step aside and let those guys move on. Or if you want to try and get back to the title and reclaim your throne, then fight Joaquin Buckley. This is the perfect fight for the feature fight of UFC 317. These guys will talk a big game up on stage as well. I think it's a really fun fight over 3 rounds. I think right now Joaquin Buckley would beat Kamaru Usman. I just think the stars are aligning. Joaquin Buckley's in his prime. Kamaru Usman is done, let's be honest. Well, we don't really know that, because against Hamzat, he actually looked pretty decent, but that was 2 years ago now. Kamaru Usman's knees are gone. People have been saying he's dealing with a lot of other injuries. Even himself have said that. So the time for Kamaru Usman is running thin, in my opinion. I think this would probably be his last fight, to be honest, and what a fight that would be, because I think this could be absolutely fireworks in the cage. The feature fight, Joaquin Buckley, Kamaru Usman, make it happen. Now let's move on to the co-main event. Co-main event, it's Pantoja versus Kai Kara-France. Makes the most sense. Kai Kara-France is meant to be fighting Pantoja next. Pantoja said he wants to return at International Fight Week. Let's have 2 title fights on the card. This will be another fun stylistic matchup as well. Both guys are normally entertaining to watch. Kai Kara-France, one of the biggest punchers in the flyweight division, coming off that big win over Steve Ercik where he stopped him in the first round. Pantoja is the guy that's just dominated the division now. I actually don't know who's going to beat him. I personally don't think Kai Kara-France will beat him, but Kai Kara-France, skill set wise, I think right now offers Pantoja his biggest challenge. I mean, the guy's got good takedown defense. He's got really good balance, especially whenever someone's in on his hips, on his legs. Look at the Askar Askarov fight. He's a big puncher for the flyweight division. He's got good striking. Pantoja, we all know how good and well-rounded that guy is. I think this would be a fun co-main event, and I think it would be a fun fight that would deliver. I think Pantoja would beat Kai Kara-France. This is a rematch. Obviously, both guys fought on The Ultimate Fighter years ago, and I think just looking at other cards that we have, like, would you want to see this fight headline like UFC 318 or UFC 319? No, you wouldn't. So let's just have this co-main event, International Fight Week. Again, International Fight Week, people all over the world. One's Brazilian, one's from New Zealand or Australia, I can't really remember. I think it's New Zealand. Perfect for this card. And finally, to round out International Fight Week, DDP versus Khamzat Chimaev. Now, the problem with this is, can Khamzat Chimaev get a visa to fight in the States? I hope so. I hope Dana White can pull some maneuvers behind the scenes with his good friend Donald Trump and get this fight in the States. We're not getting Islam versus Ilya for International Fight Week. We're not getting John Jones versus Tom Aspinall for International Fight Week. This is the next big fight. There's the 3 big fights in the UFC that could be made this year. That's Topuria versus Islam. That's Khamzat versus DDP. And the biggest one, well, I actually think Islam Ilya might actually be bigger than Jones versus Aspinall, but we'll see how it goes when both fights happen, if they happen. But this is the perfect main event for that. Again, you've got a guy from South Africa. Then you've got Khamzat Chimaev. We're Russia, but he says he represents the United Arab Emirates right now. So, again, 2 guys from different cultures headlining, or from 2 different countries, headlining the International Fight Week card. This would be dynamite. The build-up would be awesome for this matchup. It's a fight that everybody's wanted to see for quite some time now. Can Khamzat Chimaev finally become UFC champion, or will DDP continue on his legendary title reign? And if he beats Khamzat, in my opinion, I think DDP solidifies himself as the greatest UFC middleweight of all time. I know a lot of people will say, well, about Anderson Silva, and I do get that, but I think we're starting to get to a stage where names on resumes have to mean a bit more than like 5 title defenses against people who wouldn't even be in the top fucking 15 of the division today. Do you know what I mean? I think there has to be something that has to count for something. I would really like to see this matchup. I actually think Khamzat Chimaev would beat DDP, unfortunately. I think DDP will struggle with Khamzat's grappling really early on. I can actually see Khamzat finishing DDP inside 2 rounds. However, I want DDP to win, and there's definitely a way for DDP to win this matchup, and that would be outlasting Khamzat Chimaev, who in my opinion is one of the, if not the most dangerous first round fighter in UFC history. Outlasting those 2 rounds against Khamzat. I think DDP can match Khamzat Chimaev in strength, and DDP does have a couple submissions on his record, and he is tough and durable. It's not like he's going to be taken down and just quit in there. So DDP actually might not be a bad pick. However, if I remember correctly, DDP did get out grappled at times by Derek Brunson, and I just think early on Khamzat Chimaev's grappling is just next level. It really is. Although if you're picking DDP, I understand why, because if you get into round 3, I think it's DDP's fight to win at that point. I think DDP could possibly stop Khamzat Chimaev actually if he gets into the rounds 3, 4 and 5. But early on, I think Khamzat Chimaev, the finishing factor is there for him, and I think he would be extremely I think it'll be extremely hard for DDP to outlast Hamzat, especially early on, especially just with Hamzat's grappling. Although it's an interesting matchup, and that's why I want to see it. So that's how I would book UFC 317 International Fight Week. Let me know, what do you think of this card? What changes would you make? And as always, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And I'll see you all again in the next one.